Welcome to Femme Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portela, and today we are traveling back in time, okay? If you're watching the video right now, you'll see that it just did some fireworks. I don't know what I did to spark that. I do talk with my hands a lot though. So that's a treat for you people watching the video coverage. For those of you listening, we are in fact traveling back in time to 1983. We're going to hang out with some nerds in Hawkins, Indiana as we cover season 1 of Stranger Things episodes 1 through 4. But before we dive into today's episode, let me tell you how you can support and follow the podcast. You can subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can share this episode out to your friends. You can leave a review, rate, all of that stuff. If you've listened to a podcast before, you know what to do, okay? Go smash that like button. Do you guys remember when YouTube used to say that? Every YouTuber used to say that? Okay, you can follow and subscribe on Spotify. You can also watch full video breakdowns on YouTube or on Spotify. You can follow the podcast on socials. We're over on Instagram. We're over on TikTok. You can also send me an email if you are having a bout of 80s nostalgia from watching this show. You can send me an email at femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. And last but not least, stay up to date with everything that is happening on the podcast. The Patreon is closed until the new year. However, you can join the newsletter, which is completely free for you. You'll be the first to know when the Patreon opens back up. You will also be able to get Lipstick and Lore, which is all of the pop culture news from the past week. You will be able to get the Fast Five, which is a weekly content roundup. You will be able to get little chic peeks of what's happening on the podcast or little behind the scenes takes of me and what I'm doing, etc. So that is everything that's going on over on the newsletter. You can find all of this in one link that will bring you to a link tree over on the show notes. So just go into the show notes. It'll take you to all of the stuff. You can find out all the ways to support. And with that being said, let's take a chic peek at this episode. This is your spoiler warning. We are diving into episodes 1 through 4 of Stranger Things season 1. However, it is very possible and likely that we will be talking about anything from the Stranger Things universe, including future seasons. So if this is your first time, you're like, oh my gosh, it's the last season, I'm just going to jump on board right now. Welcome, happy to have you. Just be mindful of your ears that there might be spoilers for future episodes as we go through this coverage. We'll be covering Stranger Things, all seasons broken down from now until Thanksgiving, which is when we get the new season. We will be getting about a bajillion hours of coverage, according to sources at Netflix who won't let the Duffer Brothers release the actual airtime. So nothing says Thanksgiving like rushing through dinner only to suffer your food coma with 90 hours of Stranger Things coverage. So we will be covering Stranger Things until the new year. That's it. We're in Stranger Things territory. Get comfy in Hawkins, Indiana, because this is what we're doing. Okay, let's jump into this week's Femme Frame, where we will dive into key feminist themes, herstory, cultural context, and more. There are 2 big themes that I want to dig into for this week's Femme Frame, and let's start with perhaps my least hottest take ever on the internet, which is Barb. One of the most infamous internet campaigns of the last decade was Justice for Barb. And this show has, in fact, been on for nearly a decade by the time the last season comes out. Last episodes that we'll be releasing are on New Year's Eve. So, in fact, we will be watching this into 2026. And the first season of Stranger Things did, in fact, air in July of 2016. So, if you've wanted to know where the last decade of your life has gone, it's partially been dedicated to the show. Anyway, one of the most infamous internet campaigns of the last decade, Justice for Barb. And I hesitate to say this on a podcast about feminism, but I do not understand the love that we have for Barb. In fact, it often befuddles me to a deep and profound level. It's actually almost existential, because why exactly are we all so gaga for Barb? Look, I think it is a rite of passage to have your childhood friends. One of my dearest friends to this day, shout out to Alexa. I don't even know if she listens to this podcast, but I will be sending her this episode to let her know that I shouted her out. I have known Alexa since elementary school. She's one of my dearest friends. I love her. If you've listened to this podcast for a while now, you know that I am a huge advocate for women having strong friendships and being in community together. It's important, it's necessary, it's a part of our biological makeup, okay? Not to sound conspiracy theorist about biology, but it's on a spiritual biological level, okay? There is another side to that same coin though, and that is that some friends are not meant to go with you every season in life. Some friends, like Barb, don't want you to grow up. The dynamic plays out over the season, not just with Barb and with Nancy, but also with the core four. This is something that as we go through this friendship shift, as we add people into the friend group like Elle, as we get to later seasons when we add in Max, and all of these different people that become a part of this centralized group, we will talk about what it is to evolve through friendships. It's just a part of what the show is. It's a part of coming of age. And it's here with Nancy and Barb. Nancy is evolving. She is stretching into a bigger world, and Barb is not with the shits. Barb cannot embrace it. And instead of celebrating Nancy and instead of supporting Nancy, she continues to shame her over and over and over again. And when Nancy deflects that negativity, Barb just digs in her heels. How many coming of age stories have we seen where one friend ditches another friend for popularity and to chase popularity? So many. Like, that is a common trope that is in coming of age stories. And that's not what's happening here. Nancy consistently circles back to Barb to try to include her. When she realizes that everyone's shotgunning beer, she's like, come on, Barb, you can do it. And I know that some people are going to say it's peer pressure, but if Nancy didn't include her at all, then people would be saying that Nancy is the worst friend of all time. I think the fact that Nancy invites her to the party, she wants her to be involved, she wants her to be in this part of her life, and it's clear that she's trying to engage her as a bridge between the world of her past, now Nancy being the bridge between the world of her past, which is Barb and her childhood, and where she's growing up and growing into, which is Steve, and this idea of her sexuality awakening and this idea of her wanting to grow up a little bit or do something different or maybe go to a party or have a beer or whatever. This is a part of what it is to grow up, because we don't all grow up at the same pace. We don't all evolve at the same pace. We don't all move at the same speed. And I think the fact that Nancy tries to bring her in is very, very telling. And I think the fact that Barb just isn't with it, just doesn't want to be a part of it and doesn't want to be included in it, and in fact like shames Nancy every time she tries to bring her into it or makes it seem like she's better than, like she's got a moral superiority to shotgunning a beer. It's really off-putting because she's not a girl's girl, and frankly she's really not even a good friend. Do I think that that means she deserves to die? No. Leave me alone, internet, okay? Don't come at me. Of course not. I don't think that she deserved to die. But at least in this one circumstance, if we have any race around what has happened here, let it be that a female character's death actually serves the progression of another woman's storyline and arc rather than just existing to motivate a man. She was not just fridged for the purpose of evolving a man's storyline or arc. She was fridged for probably reasons unbeknownst to us, and I think because the internet went so gaga over it, then in season 2 they were like, justice for Barb, hashtag justice for Barb, right? They go in on it because this is what the internet is responding to. So I think the fact that that happened, that was sort of like a retcon, and we'll talk about some retconning that happens as we go through today's episode, but I love that it exists to progress Nancy's storyline if it's going to do anything at all. Childhood friendships can only survive if both people accept that you will grow, that you will evolve, and that you will change. And if you can navigate those changes with love, with grace, that friendship will endure. That's why I'm still friends with one of my friends from elementary school. Because as we have grown through these different seasons of life, we have not shamed each other about where we're at. We have understood that we're on different parts of the path, and instead of ever being like, why are you there? Why are you doing that? We're just so supportive of each other. And does it mean that our schedules and our time always aligns? Does it mean that the relationship existed exactly as it did when we were younger? No. But do I know that that person loves and cares about me because they're not trying to hold me back from achieving and accomplishing all the things that I want to achieve and accomplish or experience? Absolutely not. So I think the fact that Barb was having a hard time coming around to, hey, we're growing up, things are changing, things are going to be different, we're going to have to start getting comfortable with that. That is something that Barb just wasn't doing well. The second theme that I want to highlight for today's Femme Frame is how both Joyce and Nancy are labeled as crazy by the men around them. Now, on a rewatch, this was honestly a little triggering because have we not all been there? Haven't we all had an instinct, a hunch, a piece of hard-won knowledge, a lived experience, something along those lines that a man brushed off or tried to discredit by calling us crazy? So watching Joyce plead with Harper saying, I know this sounds crazy, but please believe me. I need you to believe me is such a universal experience that I think all women go through. It doesn't matter the time frame. It doesn't matter the time period. I love that they put this in there because this is exactly how men would respond to this today. So I know if I told people like I'm having supernatural experiences, I don't know what it means, but hello. By the way, I talk to dead people for a living, so I do have supernatural experiences all the time. But my point being, it is a universal experience for women that this happens. Same with Nancy. Instead of anyone taking her seriously when she reports Barb missing, the conversation pivots to whether or not she slept with Steve Harrington. Her concern gets trivialized into gossip. And remember that this show starts in 1983, which is only 3 years after doctors finally stopped diagnosing women with hysteria as a medical condition. But imagine what that does on the culture. That imprint, even 3 years later, is still there. Imagine growing up in a world where your mom or your aunt or your sisters literally may have been drugged or given medical orgasms. Where do I sign up for that? For treatments for the same kind of intuition that Joyce and Nancy are displaying as they go through these first 4 episodes. Stranger Things isn't exaggerating here. Having women being dismissed as crazy, especially by men in power, wasn't just an 80s problem. It still happens today. Most painfully in medical context, but really across all parts of life. And I thought that having it in here and having it in such a profound way by the same men that are interacting with the same women because it's a small town, I thought that was just really, really well done for the Femme Frame. Okay, for those of you who are new to this podcast, we have 2 different types of formats. We have quickies and we have slay by slays. Slay by slays are for deep dives. Quickies are for what we are going to do right now. We are going to go breezily through all 4 episodes of Stranger Things, starting with Chapter 1. The Vanishing of Will Byers. It is written and directed by the Duffer Brothers. Welcome to Hawkins, land of Christmas lights, unsupervised 12-year-olds, and government-issued trauma. We meet our core 4 in this episode, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will, who are fresh off a 10-hour D&D campaign. No one's parents come to check on them, apparently, because in the 80s, everything was running on latchkey energy. Will ends up biking home only to get nabbed by Vecna? ? Yeah, I'm poking holes already. Demogorgons just don't do telekinesis. Don't at me. All right, let's do a roll call of Hawkins' emotionally scarred adults. We have Joyce, a single mom with nerves of steel. Hopper, a grieving dad who uses beer as a personality. Dr. Brenner, who's literally Papa, but more like daddy issues incarnate. Steve, the hair Harrington. Hair goals. Nancy Wheeler, feminism's final girl energy. Jonathan Byers, artsy creep with a hero complex. And of course we meet Barb, America's future martyr of overlooked best friends. Elle shows up, bald, scared, and running from the quote-unquote bad men who apparently treat children like lab rats. Meanwhile, poor Benny just wanted to make some burgers and accidentally harbored a fugitive with psychokinetic powers. Who amongst us has never done that? For his kindness, he is shot. Rest in peace, Breakfast Daddy, gone but never forgotten. This episode closes with weird flickering lights, strange energy surges, and a town that is blissfully aware that they are sitting on a hellmouth. All right, for each episode, I am going to give you a retro glow, which is nostalgia, and boombox bliss, which is the best needle drop of the episode. So let's start with retro glow. The best 80s nostalgia. This has to be the Uncanny X-Men 134. As Will and Dustin are riding home, he's like, I'll take your X-Men 134, which of course is the comic in which Jean Grey becomes Dark Phoenix, who of course has telekinetic powers, not unlike Elle. The best needle drop boombox bliss of this episode is White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. This is heard on the radio when the agents come to find 11 at Benny's Burgers. I love the song. It's weird. Anything that has to do with The Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland, my ears perk up. And this song is so delightfully psychedelic. It's weird. I love it. Thought it was a great needle drop. A couple of things to note. Number one is that this season of television was originally supposed to be a standalone season of television. When they were creating Stranger Things, the idea is that it would be more of an anthology and that every season would be a different Stranger Thing. However, it turned into a smash success. So they had to go back and they had to build out the world, etc., etc. We're going to talk about some of that because what they created and what it needed to expand out to, some of the information that we get has to be retconned to make sense into the future. The other thing is, this first season is very loosely based off of the Montauk Project. If you don't know anything about the Montauk Project, let me dish it to you like we're two besties in the bathroom and I'm giving you the tea about the people that are hanging out back there. Okay? The Montauk Project, much like Stranger Things, is where the government is doing shady shit with kids. It's a wild conspiracy theory, perhaps, and people swear that it happened on Long Island, not far from where I grew up, not far from where I'm recording this episode of the podcast, in the 70s and the 80s. So apparently the U.S. military was doing top secret experiments at an Air Force base in Montauk. It was said to be focused on mind control, it was said to be focused on time travel, and it was said to be focused on contacting aliens. The juiciest part is that they supposedly kidnap kids because kids are easier to manipulate, and they tried to turn them into psychic warriors. Yes, they basically were doing what they are doing with 11. They say that they were able to open portals to different dimensions. They were able to summon creatures into our world. They even messed with people's memories, allegedly, to cover it all up. The kicker is they were originally going to name the show Montauk, and they were going to have the whole show set there. They changed it to Hawkins, Indiana. I don't know why they changed it to Hawkins, but they did, so that's the tea. That's the Montauk Project. Now, I live not too far from Montauk, and I'm not saying that I'm a conspiracy theorist because I'm not. However, I will say that when you go to Montauk, you can physically feel your energy body doing some shit. So if anyone's like new to this podcast and doesn't know what I do professionally, I do tarot and astrology. That is my full-time job. I am a executive coach, but I lean on the spiritual tools to support people. Anyway, what I will say is you can actually feel it in your energy body. It's crazy. You can feel your energy body like vibrating, pulsating. I know my mentor, who is the most no-nonsense person on planet Earth. She is not here to dive deep into any sort of conspiracy theory. She has like the most integrity out of anyone I've ever met in my entire life. She had an experience in Montauk. She had a time-slipping experience in Montauk. I don't know what it is. I just know that there's certain places where you go. There's certain places that I go. They're different for everybody, where quite literally you will have almost like an out-of-body or a detached body experience. When I go to Montauk, I live here. Montauk is like a huge thing for people that live on Long Island. And I like actively avoid going when my friends are like going out there, things are happening over there over the summer. I am quick to avoid it because I don't know what it is about going out there, but my energy body just feels like my soul leaves the body and I'm just having an astral projected experience. I know we're going really deep and off topic, but I just want to say it's crazy. It's really freaking wild. So anyway, they had to retcon all of this information, right? Because they have this loose blueprint of the Montauk Project that is overlaid on all of Stranger Things. They then have this show that was originally supposed to be an anthology show that then turns into a smash Netflix success. So they have to build out the world, which is why I think that even though certain things happened in season 1 that people are like, well, it wasn't supposed to happen in season 2 because there was never supposed to be a season 2. When you know that you're building out the world, I think you are looking at what you have created, hopefully, and you are saying, where are our points of expansion? Where are our points of plot twist? Where are we able to take something and make it foundational for something else? I know this was not their intention, but I think it's what you have to do when you're creating another season of TV or when you're focusing on something else. I don't know. I'm not in the writer's room, but that's what I would do. That's what my common sense says that you should do. So here's some things that we need to pay attention to from episode 1, okay, that are set up in episode 1. First and foremost, the lights. The lights start flickering at Mike's house. When they are in the garage, the lights start flickering in the garage. And then when the boys are riding their bikes home, all 3 of them have lights on their bikes. And the lights are flickering on their bikes as well if you watch the episode again. Then they pulsate every time that we are working with the Upside Down. We know this from what happens through the rest of the season, but we know this from seasons in the future as well. So that is important to note. The reason why I also say I think that they set this up to be Vecna is because I know people are going to say, well, they didn't know that they were going to have a Vecna, whatever. I understand. I'm just saying that if I was looking at this and I was retconning it and I go into season 2 knowing what I know, here's what I'm going to say about the whole disappearing of Will Byers. First and foremost, when you listen to Will get taken, it sounds like clock chimes. It's not really that. It's like the light is pulsing and it's like deep synth, like meh, meh. Congratulations if you're listening to this in your headphones. Thank you so much for being here and supporting my podcast. There is this like pulsing noise that happens that sounds a lot like clock chiming, which we know is important and connected to Vecna. This is when Will is being taken. It is like one of the most critical moments and one of the things that we continue to talk about and I think still really hasn't been answered. It's like, why was it Will? Why of all the people was it Will? So not only is it haunting the way that the music plays out, but it kind of has that clock chiming sound to it. The other thing is we don't see Demogorgons again having telekinetic powers. However, when this thing is chasing, this humanoid looking thing is chasing after Will, it seems like he's stalking Will because the lights flicker at Mike's house, then they're getting them alone off the side of the road, whatever. When Will puts the chain on, it just psychically slides the chain off. And to me, I feel like if I was somebody that was looking back on footage of season 1, knowing that I was going to be in the writer's room having to expand out the world, I would be like, maybe we could change how that happened or why that happened or what that means. That's just me. I'm just saying I think it was Vecna that took him. I know that other people are going to tell me that I'm wrong. Anyway, that's what I would do. That's what I would do to make myself seem smart if I was somebody that didn't know. Most people probably watching Stranger Things didn't know that it was supposed to just be 1 season. Most people probably don't know that. So that's what I would do. Anyway, that's just me. I'm just a girl, okay? Chapter 2, The Weirdo on Maple Street, written and directed again by the Duffer Brothers. We are introduced to the most important character in Stranger Things, Eggo Waffles. Elle opens up to Mike about bad people hurting her. Spoiler alert, they all look like CIA rejects. Dr. Brenner listens in on Joyce's desperate phone calls because surveillance state is always going to surveil. Nancy continues being an underrated feminist icon, at least in this season. She talks to Jonathan despite her entire friend group trash-talking him. We stan a teenage girl who can follow her own compass. Meanwhile, Jonathan introduces Will to the Clash via flashback because nothing says bond with your little brother like a post-punk paternal neglect. Lucas goes full conspiracy theorist on Elle and threatens to tell Mrs. Wheeler. Elle says, cute, but no, and mentally slams the door with her psychic powers. Nancy drags Barb to Steve's party where Barb becomes Hawkins' resident kink shamer. Girl, if you hate shotgunning beers and making out, just stay home. Joyce gets creepy phone calls and poltergeist lighting effects. Personally speaking, I would immediately move, but Joyce assumes that it's Will because mother always knows best. Meanwhile, Jonathan stalker snaps pics of Nancy through the bushes. Cancel him. Yes, he's sad. Yes, I understand he becomes a love interest for her. Still, cancel him. The episode ends with Barb bleeding into the upside-down pool of water, foreshadowing her transformation into the patron saint of girls who deserved better, according to the internet. She was a bad friend, but she didn't deserve to die. All right, fun fact about this episode, it actually references an episode of The Twilight Zone called Monsters Are Due on Maple. Now, I love The Twilight Zone, and this episode is one where there is a power outage in a small town that is originally written off as a meteor, but slowly turns into an alien invasion conspiracy theory that has the town residents turning against each other. The paranoia runs so rampant that one character ends up shooting another character, and it creates an all-out town riot. This episode then ends with two aliens watching from the distance. They're messing with the power grid, and they claim that they don't even need to invade with force, that all they need to do is disrupt the power and create this paranoia town to town so that they can exploit that fear in order to take over, and they will do this again and again, one town at a time. So when I look at this from a narrative perspective, it's the larger story of Stranger Things showing us that these monsters invading and creating chaos in Hawkins are using Hawkins as a test ground for a larger global plan, global takeover, piercing of the veil on a larger global scale. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting. All right, Retro Glow is the Yoda figurine. Now, this whole episode with Mike and Elle is very E.T. coded, but when he shows the little Yoda figurine and he does the little Yoda impression, I was just very tickled by that. Boombox Bliss. There are a lot of really good needle drops actually in this episode, but I have to go with, simply because it is iconic, Should I Stay or Should I Go by The Clash. This is obviously what Jonathan ends up showing Will. This is a key. This is something that becomes fundamental to Will and something that becomes fundamental to the story. And because of that, Should I Stay or Should I Go is our needle drop for this episode. Chapter 3, Holly Jolly, written by Jessica Mecklenburg and directed by Sean Levy. Barb, dead. Steve and Nancy, fucking. There's a joke in there about teenage lust and literal demonic slime, but I will let you connect the dots. Joyce strings up enough Christmas lights to bankrupt an entire Target, something that did not exist at the time that the show was allegedly taking place. However, I would like to throw that in there because we love that on all fronts. Feminist note. Single moms will turn their living room into a rave if it means it will save their kid. Nancy realizes Barb is missing while Hopper starts sniffing around Brenner's sketchy operation. Baby Holly nearly gets eaten by a wall monster because apparently no one watches their kids or toddlers in Hawkins. Flashbacks show Elle refusing to kill a cat for Brenner's experiment because even tiny telekinetic girls have boundaries. But when push comes to shove and she is forced into solitary confinement as a punishment, she snaps and kills the two guards without hesitation. And honestly, good for her. Not killing a cat, but killing two men is my kind of vibe. Where can I sign up? What would we name it? Anyways, Brenner literally consoles Elle after this, calling her brilliant for killing two people after she would not torture this cat. And he promotes this behavior. Hence my ongoing thesis that he personally invented daddy issues. Nancy searches for Barb and glimpses the Demogorgon. Joyce has a full-blown conversation with Will via Lightspeak, while the boys argue about what to do with Elle. Then, plot twist, They pull Will's body from the quarry. Cue Mike absolutely losing his shit and a tearjerker montage of mothers and sons. Our retro glow for this episode is the Cabbage Patch doll that we see when Eleven is exploring Nancy's bedroom. I could smell it from a mile away. I don't know what it is about a Cabbage Patch doll. And if you're listening to this and you've played with a Cabbage Patch doll, you know what I'm talking about. It's like a visceral sensory experience. I can smell it. It's just so underneath my nose. So that is our retro glow. Boombox Bliss, our best needle drop of this episode, has to be Heroes. This is a cover of David Bowie's Heroes. It is by Peter Gabriel. When I think of Stranger Things, I just think about the song. This is like one of those songs that I think about along with Should I Stay or Should I Go with the Clash. So it is the needle drop of this episode. This, of course, if you don't know what I'm talking about, is when Hopper and the kids find out that Will is being pulled out of the lake. That is the song that is playing during that montage. Last but not least, Chapter 4, The Body, written by Justin Dauble and directed by Sean Levy. Hopper delivers bad news to Joyce, and Joyce in turn delivers her feminist fury right back, saying, "No, I'm not crazy. I need you to believe me. A woman's intuition will always outweigh male skepticism, even if it is coming from David Harbour in the peak rugged cop era. It is not clocking to you that I'm standing on business with this." Elle gets chewed out by Mike, but still uses her powers to radio Will. Nancy calls out Steve for being a shallow hairsprayed himbo, correct, while Jonathan calls out Joyce for being hysterical, incorrect. Mike stands up to the bullies at Will's assembly, but when things get physical, Elle casually makes one of them, Troy, pee himself. A queen of righteous humiliation. Is there a future career as a dominatrix in front of her, humiliating men? The world may never know. Meanwhile, Brenner sends a dude, Shepard, into the sentient, somewhat vaginal, upside-down wall portal, and, spoiler alert, he dies. Nancy Drew Wheeler connects the dots via photographs and realizes that there is an actual monster on the loose. Hopper's investigation reveals government lies thicker than his mustache, and in the episode's mic drop moment, he breaks into the morgue, slices open Will's body, and finds nothing but stuffing, proving that Joyce was right all along. Girl boss. Mother knows freaking best. Retro glow is going to be when Joyce puts her axe through the wall. It is an iconic scene, I think, for this season of television, but it is also winking and nodding. It's flirting with The Shining when, obviously, Jack Torrance breaks down the bathroom door with an axe. Boombox Bliss is Atmosphere by Joy Division. This is the song that is playing when Hopper informs Joyce of Will's body, the discovery of Will's body. And there's not a lot of music in this episode. There's a lot of original score, but there's not a lot of like music that happens in this episode. But that to me is a really good one. All right. Let's crack open the burn book where we will look at the superlatives for this episode. We are covering the 4 episodes, so we're doing the superlatives at large. Bold and Bothered Award. This award is strictly for the Femme and Furious. It's the quote or moment that relays the most feminine rage. And in this episode, it goes to Joyce demanding that her boss give her the phone, an advance, and a pack of camels. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring, or the moment that is the most empowering. And in this episode, it goes to Elle using her psychic powers to make the school bully Troy pee his pants. The Femme Fatale Award. This is for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode, and this goes to the librarian, who literally calls Hopper out for sleeping with her and then never calling her again. Speak Your Truth Trophy for the best quote, and for this episode, it goes to Hopper with his "Mornings are for coffee and contemplation," a line that I have been using religiously since 2016. Last but not least, honorary heartthrob, because I'm just a girl and I want to talk about the most swoon-worthy moments. So call me a sucker because I love Joe Keery, and I love that when Nancy asks for privacy, Steve doesn't pressure her. He just turns around. And that is our episode for today. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Femme and Furious. I will be back on Tuesday covering episode 10 of The Summer I Turned Pretty, and then we'll be back next Friday covering episodes 5 through 8 of season 1 of Stranger Things. And until then, don't let the Demogorgon get you.